For over a century, the modern workday has been built on a persistent myth, the assumption that human cognition operates like a factory assembly line. We attempt to extract complex intellectual labor using the rigid, continuous logic of a physical manufacturing plant. But when applied to the human brain, this mechanical framework inevitably shatters. The industrial model trained us to treat output as a linear, inexhaustible resource. In this prevalent environment, time is universally equated with value. The longer you sit at the desk, the more you theoretically produce. The result is a system operating in active defiance of human physiology. By the end of 2025, 66% of employees globally were experiencing burnout. Gallup estimates this collective exhaustion and the resulting disengagement and absenteeism cost the global economy roughly $10 trillion in lost productivity every year. Managing the human brain like a mechanical asset does not yield maximum output. It guarantees systemic breakdown and financial hemorrhage. Human energy, focus, and cognitive capacity do not operate on a flat continuum. They oscillate. In the mid-20th century, a pioneering physiological researcher named Nathaniel Kleitman began quantifying human energy states. He discovered that our nocturnal sleep is governed by a 90-minute cycle, continuously alternating between light sleep, deep slow-wave sleep, and REM stages. Kleitman proposed that this oscillating rhythm does not switch off when the sun rises. He identified the basic rest activity cycle, or BRAC, a physiological system that continues to operate throughout our waking hours, dictating our moment-to-moment arousal and alertness. During wakefulness, the basic rest activity cycle dictates a hard limit. The human brain can only sustain intense, directed focus for approximately 90 to 120 minutes before it biologically mandates a recovery period. To achieve sustainable, high-level performance, organizations must abandon linear time management. We have to synchronize corporate workflows with the biological reality of this rest activity cycle. The 90-minute cognitive sprint is a rigid biochemical limitation imposed by the nervous system. When you engage in deep work, the brain rapidly consumes finite neurochemical reserves. This chart illustrates a 90-minute focus sprint. Notice the upward slope. The brain releases neuromodulators like acetylcholine to sustain attention. At 90 minutes, the availability of these chemicals drops precipitously. Simultaneously, neuroplasticity signals fade rapidly once you cross into this recovery zone. Pushing past 90 minutes means fighting your own biology. You are attempting to drive a machine that has physically run out of fuel. The result is a steep decline in output quality and a high probability of compounding errors. This transition into cognitive fatigue is marked by a measurable shift in electrical frequencies. The brain moves from high beta and gamma waves, slowing down into alpha and theta states. The immediate markers of this mandated downshift are universally recognizable. You experience sudden grogginess, heightened emotional reactivity, impatience, and hopelessly fragmented focus. If you forcefully suppress this rest phase by consuming caffeine or staring uninterrupted at a monitor, you generate what researchers term neural noise. It is a chaotic, fragmented brain state instead of productive output. Denying the neurological need for recovery does not generate extra work. It generates mental fatigue and directly increases the likelihood of critical mistakes. Despite over a century of biological evidence, modern corporate cultures operate in hostile defiance of our need for rest, cultivating distinct regional pathologies of burnout. This graph displays burnout drivers. Look at the red U.S. column. Administrative burden drives exhaustion for 40% of physicians. The blue UK column shows 33% cite feeling undervalued, driving presenteeism. The teal Australian column aligns closely, showing feeling undervalued drives intense stress. The cultural justifications, whether American hustle, British presenteeism, or rigid Australian minimums, vary across borders. But the disastrous outcome is universal, because the biological violation is identical. When you skip a mandatory 20-minute recovery phase, the central nervous system interprets your sustained effort as an active biological emergency and triggers a stress response to force alertness. Attempting to power through the dip artificially, usually with heavy caffeine consumption, forces the adrenal glands to continuously pump out cortisol and adrenaline. Chronic reliance on these chemicals creates measurable biological risks: Prolonged data links this disruption to cardiovascular issues, metabolic imbalances, and severely lowered overall immunity. Treating complex human bodies as linear machines capable of infinite endurance guarantees the catastrophic physical breakdown of the global workforce. The solution is a transition from continuous endurance to episodic intensity. This concept is thoroughly validated by studies of the world's most elite performers who achieve mastery through highly focused, distinct work sessions. Modern software tracking corroborates this behavior in the corporate sector. The most highly rated remote workers naturally adopt an Ultradian cycle, averaging roughly 75 minutes of intense focus followed by 33 minutes of complete rest. This strict sprint and recovery methodology works on a massive scale. At Wachovia Bank, researchers conducted a trial where employees took regular, mandated breaks away from their desks at 90 to 120-minute intervals. That group generated a 13% spike in year-over-year loan revenue compared to their peers. Respecting biological limits is not a soft human resources wellness perk. It is a scientifically proven mechanism for extracting superior economic output. Tony Schwartz and his consulting firm, The Energy Project, proved that organizations can achieve sustainable high performance by shifting from time management to energy management. This matrix outlines their exact methodology. Look at the blue column. To protect neurochemical reserves, they implemented rigid operational shifts, enforcing strict 9-to-5 working boundaries, creating zero distraction zones without evening emails, and providing formal support for daytime naps. They mandated true recovery. By abolishing the multitasking lunch in front of a monitor, they forced employees to step away, allowing the central nervous system the time it needs to biologically reset and defocus. Corporate leaders have to rewrite their underlying value exchange. This means dismantling the toxic stigma that views an afternoon break or a 20-minute rest as a sign of professional weakness. Sustainable elite performance cannot be forcefully extracted through longer working hours. It can only be cultivated by aligning our organizational expectations with our biological reality.